Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks, Alex. So, as Alex has just said, actually, we wanted to join you on stage to kind of join me and 600 of my close friends to talk about the presentation you did in Barcelona. You were exceptionally granular about your knowledge in mobile and digital. And please take this the right way, but more so than we would have expected at somebody at your level in the industry. Yeah. So, are you a bit of a geek? Have you taught yourself that stuff to get to that level, or is it just, as a business leader, you have to have that level of digital knowledge?
Well, thank you for inviting me back. My second time speaking today, my second time on stage, and actually every time I come on stage, just to reassure anyone else, it's incredibly nerve-wracking, and I feel really brave when I get on the stage. So be nice to myself and Nigel as we talk. So I think, as a leader today, you have to stay current. So I've been in media, as you have, for over 20 years, and I think we're at the most exciting time in media in our lives. And Eric Schmidt has a great quote where he says, slightly terrifyingly, things will never be as slow again. And I find the pace extremely hectic. I mean, Maxus, though, as a media agency, is only 6 years old. So I think what's quite helpful is we don't have a legacy of systems and tools and structures and planning tools which were created for 5 channels, which there were only 5 channels. Life was boring 20 odd years ago when we started out in media. We've got a channel planning tool that has 74 channels, and we were born in an age, to use that US military term, VUCA, so an age that is volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And that sounds quite terrifying and quite onerous, but it's also the most exciting time in the world to be in media. And I was just talking to some of our Maxus UK team earlier and saying, God, if you're not interested in your job now, if you can't be bothered to read up on everything, if you are not on LinkedIn, on Snapchat, on Twitter and Facebook and experiencing all of those things and using Chromecast and trying Netflix, still reading the newspapers, by the way, and watching TV, then you don't deserve to be in your job. So very specifically for Mobile World Congress, sorry, I talk forever, I did do lots of research, and I learned things about probabilistic modelling versus deterministic modelling and the big challenges facing the mobile industry. And the crux of part of that chat was around how we track. So not only how we track across channels, but how we track in mobile devices. And that's one of the biggest challenges facing the industry, and I think it's one of the challenges that holds some of the investment back.
Okay, so you talked about the days of sort of mainly 5 channels. We probably had time for more lunches then. Other than that, you're right, it's a more exciting, it's fast-paced. Are agencies geared up properly for it yet?
Well, I think agencies have to continually adapt. So I don't mean to do a sales pitch for Maxus, but give me one sec. So we talk about Maxus leaning into change. That's what we see our role for clients. So the world is complex, it's ambiguous, and it's very fast. So our job is to help clients try and make sense of that world of change. And whilst mobile is the fastest growing element of the digital and the media landscape, there is still a value to all those other channels and a real value in understanding from an agency perspective of how all of those channels work together.
Okay. And we briefly talked about this backstage. So, I mean, there's probably quite a few people in here who work in sales. Maybe some people have only ever worked in mobile or digital. You guys are responsible across all communications platforms. So, is there a lesson to be learned by us guys coming into agencies about how we address your challenges from a client perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to that point about connectivity and collaboration. So how is your brand on Instagram, or how is your mobile product or your tech platform going to help the rest of a marketing campaign, not even a media campaign or advertising campaign, but how is it going to be additive and complementary to the rest of your activity?
Okay, so I'm guessing, again, it'll be a lower level than you're at, but most presentations that go in will be quite functional in terms of what people can deliver. Is there a lesson here that we can all take from the kind of conversations we should be having directly around, should we be coming in partnership with a TV channel, with an outdoor business, for example?
That would be delightful. Would help make our jobs more easy. And I think actually the IAB has done a really good job of beginning to partnering with Thinkbox, I think, most recently. I'm looking at Guy to nod at me.
You've done that?
Yes, you have done that.
This is the meerkatting study, right, about people second screening when they're looking at TV and then...
So I think that would be incredibly helpful to navigate through. And I guess, go back to the old P&G model, an ad had features and benefits. So what are the benefits of what you're offering rather than just the features that we can all get blinded by the tech?
Yeah, and I think particularly if you're in a business which is ad tech focused, I think that's a real danger.
Yeah.
You talk about the features to a level that a comms planner has no concept and probably no interest in.
Yeah.
And actually the features are great, but what are the benefits to a client from that?
Yeah, and also we blind ourselves with acronyms. So in the old days, we used to, TV was a sort of mythical art, and GRPs and TVRs and effective reach and frequency, it all seemed like incredibly complicated. I think the TV buyers just tried to make it that way. And now we have DMPs and DSPs, anything beginning with a D, actually, and lots of different models, disclosed models, non-disclosed models, transparent models. And actually, we are in danger of getting so technical that we lose sight of, to the point Rob made earlier, and I'm sure lots of people have made, the end goal is to engage with people, not just blind them with...
Yeah, and a couple of speakers have talked about audiences, not numbers, and I think that's really important. So you started to dig a little bit into disclose, non-disclose, so it probably feels like a time to bring up programmatic. So I've sat through a lot of programmatic sessions at conferences like this, where there are people on the stage who all work in programmatic, people in the audience all work in programmatic. Yeah. And the first question is always, so what is programmatic? Now, given that the definition is probably that it's a system of automated trading to make transactions quicker and more efficient, it feels like the challenge and why there's confusion around the area isn't actually around the definition at all, it's around how people are executing programmatic. Can you give us a bit of an insight about why is there still confusion about something that feels like it's actually quite simple?
Well, I'll make a build on your definition. So I think programmatic initially was about automation in order to maximize efficiency and efficacy, actually, and speed of transaction in the long tail of digital. I think now, actually, the real opportunity for programmatic that gets missed often is about precision. So yes, there is automation, but automate is a terrible word, isn't it? It sounds really boring. It sounds like you're just automating and doing the same thing over and over again. But of course, machine learning is incredibly helpful. And the real benefit of programmatic is the data that it creates, and thereafter the insights and the retargeting and the precision with which you can follow an audience, create the right context, and deliver the outcome for a client. And I guess maybe the reason it does get confused, and I brought up those terms I probably shouldn't have done about transparent and non-disclosed and disclosed models, is I think there are certain people that don't like changes in business models, but you have to adapt. So the agency model has to adapt and business models adapt in order for us to survive and to thrive in a new world.
Okay. So we move away from features-based. So we're very lucky that Lindsay's in a massive global role now, overseeing sort of the whole Maxus empire. I noticed recently on Facebook your grueling tour of Far Eastern beach resorts, where you have lavish offices. So in your travels around the world, Hong Kong, Sydney, I think your air miles have gone through the roof. But what can we as an industry learn from, who's doing the really great stuff globally, and is there anything that we can pick up from stuff that you picked up across your offices?
Yeah, I don't think I sat on the beach once, Nigel. So we did have a global conference in Bali, and we went to Bali because it was a very cost-efficient place to be once you were there.
We went to Croydon.
But I guess the difference is a third of Maxus's business worldwide is in Asia Pacific. So actually, for us, slightly easier to be there.
Good save.
And actually, we did. Thank you. And we did also, at the start of the conference, so it was a great opportunity for me to kick off and talk to all our market leaders. We did have a ban on selfies with pictures of a foot extended in front of an ocean, because that's not particularly motivating for everyone back in the office. I guess more seriously, once you're in Bali, you might as well go to Australia, because it's only 7 hours on a plane. So we've got 2 offices in Sydney and Melbourne, and then came back through east to China. And I think really it's the countries like China, Japan, and Korea is probably most often cited as the most digitally advanced and very mobile. So we don't have an office, actually, unfortunately, in Korea, but I do know that Korea has got the largest amount in terms of volume, the highest growth in m-commerce. But what's really interesting about that is the people or the demographic using mobile for commerce purposes the most are women in their late 20s and early 30s who are basically stay-at-home mums. So you unpick that and go, well, why is that the case? And it's because distribution is harder in Korea, but it's really because they're very time poor. They've got kids and they've got loads of stuff to do. And actually, 84% of all nappies bought now are bought online because, you don't have the time to go out to the shops. So actually, the drive of m-commerce isn't about business use. It's not about young kids. It's about young mums in Korea. But China is a market where we have 4 offices and we do very well. And we work with one of the fastest growing mobile companies there, Huawei. And I think what's interesting about China is it's just enormous. I mean, it's astonishing when you go. I think it's 1.5 billion people. And a third of the world's smartphones are in China. So 500 million smartphones in China. And again, mobile commerce is incredibly high. And I think the interesting example that stands out for me in China, which is, I guess, a lesson to us all, is how do you, so the Korea example and also China is understanding the human element to what behaviour is in those markets. And in China, we have a lovely campaign for Huawei, which we're entering hopefully into Cannes, which is because China is so enormous and because everybody tends to leave their home territory to go and work in one of the major cities, and they travel hundreds and thousands of miles away from their family, so they lose a lot of contact from people they were at school with or their family. So we developed a lovely campaign called Twin Selfies, where we can do a live twin selfie. So I would take a picture of myself in Guangzhou like this, and then, would you like to do the same? Pretend Nigel's in Beijing, and then merge those selfies together, and then you have a new selfie of Nigel and I making a connection. Just a really nice human insight. So a way of people using mobiles, using digital, and using pictorial images to help them feel closer.
Right, and we find in a lot of our pitches that you're having to invent almost new campaigns, which is really different to traditional media owner relationship where you're coming in and you're selling a page or you're selling an ad in the radio. So who generally will drive an idea like that? Would that have come from the client, from the agency, from the media owner?
God, well, collaboration is, I'm not going to use that terrible phrase. Collaboration is very important, is what I'll say. I don't really think it doesn't really matter where a great idea comes from. I think what's key today, and the reason collaboration is key, is because you need the tech platform, and you need a media owner, and you need the creative agency and media agency to work together. So I don't really care where the idea comes from, but I think being able to collaborate is really important. What I would say to media owners, I know there's a lot of media owners in the room, is because you know your consumers so well, because there's so much data out there, particularly for mobile, in the mobile space, actually working with media owners to create content is one of the great ways forward. So actually we are really keen to work with media owners and work in partnerships. So we have a content partnership, it's a content division, but essentially it's a partnership division in Maxus UK, certainly called Chorus, where we want to work with media owners using the knowledge you have, A, about your consumers and using that data, but B, about your platform to create bespoke content that's going to work really hard.
So when you go away and you're hoovering up all these great ideas that's happening around the world, I guess the challenge in a global role, where once you ran the UK and you could kick ass of anyone who's in your office, suddenly now you've got all of these different sort of entities globally. How do you bring together some of that best practice and start making sure that Maxus UK are doing some of the amazing things that China and Hong Kong and Sydney are doing on mobile and digital?
Well, I think the biggest lesson I've learned, or I'm learning as you move from a country to a global role, is control versus influence, very broadly. So in the UK, we're all control freaks probably really, but in the UK you're very responsible for your P&L and you are in control of exactly what you're doing. When you are working globally, your job is to influence and to, I use the word inspire rather than delegate, trying to inspire people, but you're trying to inspire, cajole and get people to do things for you and get everybody pointing in the same direction. So my responsibility is to set a really clear direction, to get up and stand on stages, to visit the offices and make everybody feel that there is something to get behind. So that difference between control and influence is really important. And I think when you go to the local markets, it's really important to show some empathy, to ask some questions. Whenever I present and do a town hall about what we're trying to do globally, I always include a couple of slides that I'll have got the gossip on that local office, so I'll know who's complaining about their towel being used by everyone else, and who's got the prize for talking too much, or and talk about what wins they've had. So I think trying to understand the cultural nuance is great. And then, but going to each of the offices and understanding what brilliant work looks like. So I talked about China being digitally ahead. I think America is fantastically well ahead, and our biggest global client is actually a local client in America called NBC Universal. And they do some fantastic digital work. So that account is $1 billion in billing. So 180 million of that is digital billings. So you can just see the scale of that kind of client. And the work I see on some of those, particularly on the movie releases, is outstanding. So I'll give you a quick example at the end of last year for Weve, which is a horror film. And we did the first ever video ad on Snapchat, which quickly made me download Snapchat on my phone. And what's interesting about that is I think there's a really interesting dynamic around creativity in mobile, which is how do you create videos that are portrait, not landscape, because we've always created landscape videos, and how do you do that in a way that is empathetic to that environment. So it was quite cool. It was a really good experiment with Snapchat. And then I was at the Festival of Media earlier in the week, and I saw a beautiful, brilliant presentation from Tumblr, actually. And Tumblr there, I had no idea, but there's an artist called Cindy who reimagines brands on Tumblr and does it in an incredibly interesting way. She's one of many. And she had also been asked to create a Tumblr experience for the film Ouija, which was totally different to the Snapchat one, but utterly beautiful and brilliant. So when I go around the world and I see great work, my job is to come back and try and share it with everybody and inspire.
I guess that's part of our industry. It's very easy for something to go global pretty quickly, right? So a lot of media owners and ad tech businesses in the UK are actually part of a global entity. So I'm aware that the clock's ticking, and I've got so much I could talk to you about, but I really wanted to dig a little bit into Wackle. Obviously, you're a leading light in Wackle in the UK and have been for several years, which is amazing. I know that you guys have sort of reappropriated Sheryl Sandberg's kind of lean-in philosophy. I think we're really lucky in media to have so many strong female role models, particularly in the UK. Looking around the crowd here, actually looks pretty evenly split. Are we doing everything we could and should be doing?
No. So
not me personally.
Not you, Nigel. I'm sure you're doing a really good job. Oh, I mean, again, I don't want to reference back. So I spoke at the Festival of Media earlier in the week. Day one, 3 o'clock, I was the first female on the stage. Not good enough. Not good enough to see a panel of white middle-aged men on the stage. No disrespect to white middle-aged men, but I do think we have to work harder. I'm married to one, frankly. So, but I don't think it's good enough. And actually, I do a lot of talks. Quite a lot of media owners. Actually, so I've been into LinkedIn, Facebook, and Google, where they want me to come in and talk to younger women about how do you get to the top. And the fact is, we enter the industry with 50% of our industry being female. And when you look at senior management, so partners, directors, etc., we're pretty good in media. It's about 25%. Still not good enough. I'm the only global Group M female CEO and one of 3 across WPP worldwide. There's only 5 FTSE 100 CEOs are women. So something happens along the way. And I think there's a mix of societal pressures, cultural pressures, physical pressures, and you having children. Only a female can have a baby, as far as I'm aware, currently. So, what do we do about that? How do we make work more flexible? And part of the challenge, I think, with Wackle, or part of the inspiration for Wackle, is sometimes I think women need an arm around them to say, of course you can do that, and here's the reasons why, and get that confidence, and you go for it. And sometimes they need a kick up the backside to go, for God's sake, of course you can do it, and actually really push yourself forward and stand up and be brave. So I don't think we're good enough, because the stats show we're not good enough. So I think it's incumbent on us all to work out what we can do. And I think in digital and in tech, it's really not good.
Okay. Ladies in the audience, just quickly, round of applause. I think I'd probably suggest if any of you ladies haven't been involved in Wackle, then do take a look at the website. There's all sorts of great investment plans. You guys can get involved in education, in conferences, and some fun dinners. So do have a look. Right, running out of time. So quick fire round. Favorite app?
My new one is Vivino. The wine one. Take an image of the label and it gives you the tasting notes, and you can pretend you're a really good wine buff. And you can remember what you've drunk the next day, which I find incredibly helpful.
Do they send it to you, yeah?
Yeah.
They should send you the wine.
They should actually.
We're at a conference today. A lot of wank words thrown around at conference. What are your least favourite? Mine is ecosystem.
What did you say, Wang?
Wank, yeah, something if you like, yeah.
Okay.
Awkward.
Nascent.
Yes, very much. And I'm sure people will be tweeting around a lot of those during the day, so look forward to those. If you weren't at Maxus, what do you think your ideal media job would be?
Martin Sorrells.
Linked into that, your ideal media pay packet? Same answer. don't
Worth
that.
every penny.
What's your favourite London restaurant?
Murano, because that's where my husband proposed to me. Go for the hearts.
And,
you can't get the minds.
Was the recent election won or lost on social media?
God, I think it was lost with a total lack of vision from almost every party, and won despite itself.
And then lastly, I mean, you've got pretty much all of the senior mobile digital industry in the room. If there's one thing they should do differently or change tomorrow, what would you suggest that would be?
I think going back to this, not thinking about the bubble, the mobile bubble, thinking about how everything can work, because consumers don't see any difference between the device they're holding in their hand or their pocket or what they expect to see on the screen, and they expect brands to be able to live with them, whether that be on some wearable tech or on their phone or in their home. So I think until we crack this way of being able to morph seamlessly with consumers, then it's challenging. So how do you collaborate, and how do we all as an industry actually try and improve this issue with not being able to track? So if you can't track and you can't measure, then investment won't follow.
Excellent answer. Guys, I'm sure you'll join me to thanks to Linz for her time today. Some really valuable lessons there, but thanks very much for
Thank you for having us.